Here's a quick little tip. You're going to move this engine from the hoist to your engine stand. Go ahead and grab that mounting apparatus from your engine stand and bolt it up to the engine while it's still sitting in the hoist. That makes it a hell of a lot easier. This is my little SubaruONLY shop. It's a DIY Subaru channel. It's a channel where all I do is Subaru builds and race Subaru vehicles and motorsport events. It's a DIY themed channel where I walk you guys through the steps to get your Subaru back on the road and hopefully do a little racing of your own. So thanks for checking out the video, guys. I really appreciate it. To mount this sucker up, grab those bell housing bolts and a couple large washers, and that should work perfect. Actually, this clutch assembly is going to have to come off. A lot of times this clutch assembly actually sticks out too far for you to mount your engine stand bracket to the back of your engine, and that's definitely my case. So I'm going to have to remove this clutch assembly. That way I can actually bolt that bracket up to the back of this engine and then put it in the engine stand. And I want to bolt that bracket up to this engine stand while it's still on the hoist, because it's easier to lower this sucker with that bracket and then slide that engine stand bracket into the engine stand while it's still on the hoist. So the next thing I need to do is go ahead and remove this clutch pack. And to do that, you're just going to remove these 12mm bolts to go around the outside of it. An impact gun works great to remove these bolts. It'll provide that quick shock to the bolt to loosen the threads. Just make sure it's not cross-threaded as you pull that sucker out. But usually pulling a bolt out with an impact gun is a pretty safe bet, as long as you're kind of aware of not cross-threading that sucker. Another thing to be aware of is that this clutch assembly is actually torqued down with tension on those clutch fingers. So when you disassemble it, you actually want to move in a star pattern and slowly loosen all the bolts evenly so that the tension on those clutch fingers is evenly removed as you take this plate off. And then when you remove the last bolt, make sure this clutch assembly doesn't fall off. There's actually locating dowels that are holding it in place, but those dowels actually won't hold it up against gravity, and that sucker could slip off. And when you pull this clutch assembly off, make sure you don't drop that friction plate on the backside, because this friction plate is actually a separate piece. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the shop, and we'll take a closer look at the condition later. Now that we have the clutch assembly removed, we should be able to mount this engine stand bracket to the back of the engine. Again, those transmission bell housing bolts with an extra washer should work perfect. Make sure they're nice and snug. Okay, now this bracket is bolted up to the back of the engine. We can align this snout with our engine stand as we lower it down on the hoist. And we'll actually slide this snout into the engine stand before the hoist drops the engine all the way down. I'll show you guys what I mean right now. And then get it lined up so you can put that locking pin in it. Once you have that locking pin in your engine stand, you can drop it to the ground and you can remove the hoist. Alright, and there we have it. The engine's out of the car. It's off the hoist, it's on the engine stand. Now we're ready to rotate this engine, we're ready to tear it down, we're ready to pull off those heads and replace those head gaskets. But in addition to replacing those head gaskets, I'm actually going to do a lot of other things here. I'm going to take a closer look at the oiling system. I'm going to replace that oil pump pickup. I'm going to replace that oil pan. I'm going to replace a couple other things like the PCV system on this engine and a lot of other good practices to perform anytime you're going to be rebuilding a Subaru engine. Tearing this engine down and rebuilding it will be the next engine build series, and I hope you guys will follow me as we continue working on this GC8 build. Thanks so much for checking out the video, guys. I'm definitely enjoying making these videos, so if you have any questions or comments, please go ahead and leave a comment. If you like the video, please go ahead and give it a like. I'm Luke, this is the SubaruONLY Show. Until next time, guys, later.